Montana Territory, 1878. A widow collapsed in the mud outside a general store, her 9 children screaming around her. She'd just been thrown out for stealing a handful of rotten potatoes. The whole town watched. Nobody moved. Then a stranger rode in, a man with scars on his hands and ghosts in his eyes. What he did next would change everything. But first, this town had to show its true face. Stay until the end and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already subscribed to follow this journey. Margaret Sullivan hit the ground hard. Her knees struck first, then her palms, then her whole body crumpled into the cold Montana mud like a puppet with its strings cut. 9 children's voices rose up around her, crying, screaming, calling out "Mama," in that desperate way that cut through everything else. "Get up," she whispered to herself. "Get up, Maggie. They're watching." But her arms wouldn't hold her. 3 days without food had seen to that. "Mama!" 10-year-old Eliza grabbed her shoulder. "Mama, please." "I'm fine." Maggie forced the words out. "I'm fine, Lizzie. Help me up." Eliza tried. God love her, she tried. But a 10-year-old couldn't lift a grown woman, and the other children were too small, too scared, too hungry to do anything but cry. Behind them, the door of Henderson's general store slammed shut. "And stay out!" Mr. Henderson's voice carried across the street. "Thieving beggar woman, I catch you in here again. I'm calling the sheriff." Maggie closed her eyes. The potatoes she'd tried to take, 3 of them, spotted with rot, sitting in a bucket meant for pig slop, were scattered in the mud around her. 3 potatoes. That's all she'd wanted. 3 potatoes for 9 children who hadn't eaten since Tuesday. It was Friday now. "Mama, everyone's looking." That was Samuel, her oldest boy at 8 years old. His voice shook. "They're all looking at us." Maggie lifted her head. He was right. The main street of Elk Ridge had stopped moving. Women in clean dresses stood frozen on the boardwalk. Men in suits paused mid-stride. Children pressed against their mothers' skirts, pointing at the spectacle in the mud. A widow. 9 dirty children. Rotten potatoes. Nobody moved to help. Please. Maggie hated the word as it left her mouth. Please, someone. My children haven't eaten in 3 days. Just a little bread. Anything. I'll work for it. I can sew, I can clean, I can... We don't need your kind here. A woman's voice, sharp and cold. Mrs. Harrington, the banker's wife. Elk Ridge is a respectable town. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for work. Work. Mrs. Harrington laughed. Who'd hire a woman with 9 brats hanging off her skirts? You should have thought about that before your husband ran off. He didn't run off. He died. That's not what I heard. Maggie's jaw tightened. The lies had followed her from Nebraska. William Sullivan, the man who'd promised her the world, had taken what little money they'd saved and disappeared into the Montana goldfields. That was 18 months ago. Word came 6 months back, a letter from a stranger that William had died in a mining accident. No gold, no money, no body to bury. Just a widow with 9 children and nowhere to go. Get up, Maggie. She pushed herself to her knees. Get up. Mama, I'm hungry. 6-year-old Rosie tugged at her sleeve. My tummy hurts so bad. I know, baby. I know. Can't we have the potatoes? They're right there. Maggie looked at the rotten vegetables scattered in the mud. Her children looked at them too. 9 pairs of eyes hollow with hunger fixed on food that pigs would reject. No. She pulled Rosie close. We don't eat from the ground like animals. But Mama, I said no. She struggled to her feet. Her vision swam. Black spots danced at the edges, and for a moment she thought she might fall again. But Eliza was there, steady as always, and Samuel took her other arm, and together her 2 oldest children kept her upright. We're leaving, Maggie announced to no one in particular. We'll find somewhere else. There ain't nowhere else, a man's voice this time. Tom Bradley, who owned the livery stable. "You been through here 3 times this week, woman. Every store, every house. Ain't nobody gonna help you." "Then we'll move on." "To where? You got no horse, no wagon, no money. Winter's coming. You think you'll make it 20 miles with 9 young'uns on foot?" Maggie didn't answer. She couldn't. "Face facts, Mrs. Sullivan." Mr. Henderson had stepped outside his store, now arms crossed, face smug. "You're done. Best thing you can do is give them children to the church. Let decent folks raise 'em. You clearly can't." "No. It's the Christian thing." "I said no." Maggie's voice cracked. "They're mine. They're all I have left. And I'll die before I let anyone take them from me." "That can be arranged," someone muttered. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Maggie gathered her children around her, all 9 of them. Eliza and Samuel, the oldest. Then Mary, age 7. The twins James and Joseph, age 5. Little Thomas and baby William, age 4. Rosie, age 6. And in her arms, 18-month-old Hannah, too weak to cry anymore. "Come on," she said quietly. "We're going." "Where, Mama?" Mary's voice was small. "Away from here." She started walking, one foot in front of the other. Her children followed a ragged procession of hunger and despair. The townspeople parted to let them through, but no one offered a hand, a word of comfort, a scrap of bread. Maggie kept her head high. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. They made it to the edge of town before her legs gave out again. This time, there was no getting up. She went down in the middle of the road, dust rising around her, and this time her body simply refused to move. The children swarmed her, crying, shaking her, begging her to wake up, but Maggie could only lie there and stare at the gray Montana sky. "This is it," she thought. "This is where we die." "Mama!" Eliza was crying now, really crying. "Mama, please, you can't leave us. You promised." "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." The world started to fade. The children's voices grew distant. Maggie felt herself slipping away, and some part of her was grateful. At least the hunger would stop. At least the shame would end. Then she heard hoofbeats. A horse moving fast coming from the north. Maggie couldn't lift her head to look, but she heard the animal slow, heard the creak of leather as someone dismounted, heard boots hitting the dirt. "What in God's name?" A man's voice. Deep, rough at the edges. "Not from around here. Mister, our mama won't wake up." That was Samuel. "Please, mister, help her." "Easy, son, easy." The boots came closer. "How long she been like this?" "She just fell down. She ain't ate in days. None of us have." Silence. Then, "Eliza, is it? Your name's Eliza?" Yes, sir." "How many of you are there?" "9, sir, 9 children, and Mama makes 10. Another silence. Maggie felt something touch her face, a hand calloused and warm, fingers pressed against her neck, checking for a pulse. "She's alive." "Barely." The man's voice hardened. "You mean to tell me this town let a woman and 9 children starve?" "Nobody would help us," Samuel said. "They called Mama names, said she was a beggar and a thief." "Is that a fact?" The hand left Maggie's face. She heard the man stand, heard his boots turn toward town. "You there?" His voice carried like thunder. "Yeah, you lot standing around gawking. Someone want to explain why there's a woman dying in the street with 9 hungry children around her?" No response. "I asked a question. Still nothing." "Fine." The man's voice dropped low, dangerous. "Then let me tell you something. I don't know what kind of Christian folk you call yourselves, but where I come from, we don't let women and children die in the dirt. We don't call mothers thieves for trying to feed their young. And we sure as hell don't stand around watching while a family starves." "Now see here." Mr. Henderson's voice blustering. "Shut your mouth." The stranger's tone allowed no argument. "I seen men do terrible things in war. seen things that'd turn your stomach. But this is something else. This is a whole town deciding that a widow and her babies ain't worth saving, and every single one of you is going to have to live with that." Footsteps approached. Mrs. Harrington's voice, shrill and defensive. "Who do you think you are coming into our town and—" "Name's Josiah McCann, and I don't rightly care what you think of me, ma'am. Right now I'm taking this woman and these children somewhere they won't be left to die. Any objections?" Silence. "Didn't think so." Strong arms slid beneath Maggie's body. She felt herself lifted off the ground as easily as if she weighed nothing. Her head lolled against a broad chest, and she caught the smell of leather and wood smoke and something clean underneath. "Hold on," the man Josiah said quietly. "You and your young'uns are safe now." Maggie wanted to respond. Wanted to ask who he was, why he was helping what he wanted in return. But the darkness was pulling at her, and she didn't have the strength to fight it anymore. The last thing she heard was Eliza's voice, small but fierce. "Thank you, mister. Thank you for seeing us." When Maggie woke, she was warm. That was wrong. She shouldn't be warm. She should be cold, lying in the dirt, dying slowly while her children cried around her. Instead, she was lying on something soft, a bed, with blankets piled on top of her and a fire crackling somewhere nearby. Her whole body ached, but the desperate hollow hunger had been replaced by something else. Fullness. Someone had fed her. She tried to sit up. "Easy now." A woman's voice, gentle and firm. "Don't go moving too fast. You about scared us half to death." Maggie blinked. An older woman sat beside the bed, gray-haired and kind-faced, watching her with worried eyes. "My children," Maggie croaked. "Where are my children?" "Safe and sound. Every last one of them." The woman smiled. "They're in the other room eating stew like they ain't seen food in a month, which from what I hear ain't far from the truth." Tears sprang to Maggie's eyes. "They're alive." "Very much so. That little one, Hannah, she was in a bad way, but we got some broth into her, and she's perking up now." "Oh, thank God." Maggie covered her face with her hands. "Thank God. Thank Josiah, more like." The woman patted her shoulder. "He's the one who brought you in. Carried you 2 miles on horseback while your older ones walked alongside. Don't know how he managed it, but he did." "Josiah." Maggie lowered her hands. "The man from the road." "That's right. Josiah McCann. This is his place, well, his and mine, I suppose. I'm Martha Gideon. I keep house for him, cook and clean, that sort of thing. He ain't much for domesticity on his own." "Why?" The question came out before Maggie could stop it. "Why did he help us? He doesn't know us. He doesn't owe us anything." Martha's expression shifted, something complicated moving behind her eyes. "That's a question for Josiah. But I'll tell you this much. He's not the kind of man who walks past suffering. Not anymore. Not anymore. Like I said. Question for him." Martha stood. "Now you want to see your children, because they've been asking for you every 5 minutes since you got here." Maggie nodded, not trusting her voice. Martha helped her out of bed. Maggie's legs trembled, but they held, and slowly the 2 women made their way through a short hallway into a larger room. The sight that greeted Maggie stopped her cold. Her children, all 9 of them, were seated around a large wooden table, bowls of steaming stew in front of them. They were eating with the focused intensity of the starving spoons, scraping against pottery, barely pausing to breathe. Little Hannah sat in a high chair, someone's old one by the looks of it, gnawing on a piece of soft bread. They looked up when Maggie entered. "Mama!" 9 voices all at once. 9 bodies launching from chairs and crashing into her like a wave. Maggie went down to her knees. Not from weakness this time, but from the sheer force of their love, and she held as many of them as she could, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." "We thought you died," Rosie sobbed. "We thought you left us like Papa did." "Never." Maggie kissed her daughter's forehead. "I will never leave you, not ever." "The nice man saved us." That was Thomas, 4 years old, his face smeared with stew. "He carried you on his horse." "I know, baby. I know. He's really tall. Taller than Papa was." Maggie didn't know how to respond to that, so she just held her children tighter. "Mrs. Sullivan?" The voice came from behind her, deep, quiet. She'd heard it before on the road telling off the townspeople. Maggie turned. Josiah McCann stood in the doorway filling most of the frame. He was tall. Thomas was right about that, with broad shoulders and rough hands, and a face that looked like it had seen too much. Dark hair shot through with gray at the temples, eyes the color of strong coffee. A scar ran along his jaw, faded white against weathered skin. He wasn't handsome, not in the way William had been. But there was something solid about him, something steady that made Maggie feel like the ground beneath her feet might actually hold. "Mr. McCann." She straightened, still kneeling still, surrounded by children. "I don't know how to thank you." "Don't need thanks." He shifted his weight uncomfortable. "You needed help. I was there. That's all." "That's not all. You could have ridden past. Everyone else in that town did." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or anger. "Yeah, well, I ain't everyone else." Silence stretched between them. The children watched with wide eyes, sensing the weight of the moment, even if they didn't understand it. "You should eat more," Josiah said finally. "Martha made plenty. And then you should rest. We can talk about what comes next in the morning." "What comes next?" "Where you go from here. What you need." He paused. "Whether there's family somewhere who can take you in." Maggie's heart sank. Of course. He was already planning how to get rid of them. Why would she expect anything different? A man didn't take in a widow and 9 children out of the goodness of his heart. There was always a limit to kindness. "There's no family," she said quietly. "No one. My parents are dead. William's people disowned him years ago." "Then we'll figure something else out." "Mr. McCann." "Josiah." He cut her off. "Just Josiah. And I ain't throwing you out tonight if that's what you're thinking. You'll stay here until you're strong enough to travel until we can find somewhere proper for you to go. That's not negotiable." "I can work." Maggie's pride flared up, that stubborn core that had kept her walking when walking seemed impossible. "I won't accept charity. Whatever you need done, cooking, cleaning, mending, I can do it. I'm not helpless." "Never said you were." "Then let me earn our keep, please." Josiah studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, respect maybe, or recognition. "All right," he said. "We'll work that out too. But first you eat, then you sleep. The rest can wait." He turned and walked out, boots heavy on the wooden floor, leaving Maggie alone with her children and the strange new hope blooming in her chest. "I like him," Rosie announced. "He's nice." "He seems nice," Maggie corrected automatically. "We don't know him yet." "He saved us. That means he's nice." Eliza, ever practical, shook her head. "That means he did a nice thing. People can do nice things and still be bad." "Lizzie." Mary looked scandalized. "I'm just saying what Mama always says. Don't trust too easy." Maggie pulled all her children close again, breathing in the miracle of their survival. "Eliza's right. We don't know Mr. McCann's intentions. But for now we're safe and warm and fed. That's more than we had this morning. So let's be grateful and careful at the same time." "Yes, Mama," came the chorus. Martha appeared with another bowl of stew, this one for Maggie. "Eat up. You need your strength." Maggie ate. The stew was simple beef, potatoes, carrots, but it tasted like heaven. She couldn't remember the last time she'd had a hot meal. Couldn't remember the last time her stomach hadn't been twisted with hunger. While she ate, the children talked. About the horse ride, about the cabin, about the chickens they'd seen outside. Normal things, childish things. The terror of the morning was already fading, replaced by the resilience that only the young possessed. Maggie listened and ate and tried not to think about tomorrow. Because tomorrow would bring questions. Tomorrow would bring decisions. Tomorrow she would have to face the reality that a stranger had saved her life and she had absolutely nothing to offer in return. Tomorrow, she would have to find out what Josiah McCann really wanted. But tonight she was warm. Her children were fed, and for the first time in 18 months, Maggie Sullivan allowed herself to feel something other than despair. She didn't dare call it hope. Not yet, but it was close. The fire burned low. The children were asleep now, tucked into makeshift beds. Martha had arranged blankets on the floor cushions from chairs, a cot that creaked but held. 9 small bodies breathing easy for the first time in weeks. Maggie sat by the dying fire, too wired to sleep, watching the flames dance. "Can't rest," she startled. Josiah stood in the doorway, a cup of coffee in each hand. He moved quiet for such a big man. "Thought you might want something warm." He offered her one of the cups. "Gets cold out here at night." Maggie took it. "Thank you." He settled into a chair across from her, stretching his long legs toward the hearth. For a while, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled. Wind whispered around the cabin walls. "You want to ask me something?" Josiah said finally. "Been watching you work up to it all evening." Maggie gripped her cup. "Why did you help us?" "Told you already. You needed it." "That's not a reason. Lots of people need help. Most folks walk right past." "I ain't most folks." "Clearly." Maggie set her cup down. "But I need to understand. I've got 9 children depending on me, Mr. McCann. I can't afford to trust blindly. I can't afford to hope and have that hope be wrong. So please, please just tell me the truth. What do you want from us?" Josiah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I had a wife once, Hannah. She died 5 years ago in childbirth. Baby didn't make it either." Maggie's breath caught. "I'm so sorry." "I spent a long time after that being angry. At God, at the world, at myself for not saving her. Spent a long time drunk too, if I'm honest. Nearly lost this place. Nearly lost everything." He stared into the fire, and Maggie saw something in his eyes that she recognized. The hollow look of someone who'd survived when they weren't sure they wanted to. "What changed?" she asked softly. "A family came through. Settlers heading west. Their wagon broke down on my land, and they needed help fixing it. I almost turned them away. Almost told them to go to hell and leave me alone. But they had children. 3 little ones all looking at me with those big eyes, and I—" He stopped, swallowed. "I couldn't do it. Couldn't turn them away. So I fixed their wagon and fed them dinner, and when they left in the morning, the wife she took my hand and said something I ain't never forgot." "What did she say?" "She said, 'The pain don't go away if you hide from the world. It just rots. The only way through it is to let it make you kinder instead of harder.'" Josiah met Maggie's eyes. "I ain't claiming to be kind, but I'm trying. And when I saw you in that street with those children around you and that whole town looking the other way, I saw myself, how I used to be, and I couldn't let it happen." Maggie felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them away. "So you're not looking for anything?" she said. "You just wanted to help." "That's about the size of it. I don't know what to do with that." "Don't have to do anything with it." Josiah stood draining the last of his coffee. "Just get some rest. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow." He started toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth," he said without turning around, "you're about the bravest woman I ever met. Walking from Nebraska with 9 children, no money, no help. Facing down that whole town when they tried to take your young'uns. That takes something most folks ain't got. It wasn't bravery. It was desperation. Sometimes they look the same. He glanced back, and there was something almost like a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Sleep well, Mrs. Sullivan." "Maggie," she heard herself say. "My name is Maggie." He nodded. "Sleep well, Maggie." Then he was gone, and Maggie was alone with the fire and the silence and the strange, terrifying feeling that maybe, just maybe, the worst was finally behind them. She didn't sleep that night. But for the first time in 18 months, it wasn't fear keeping her awake. It was something else entirely. Morning came with the smell of bacon and the sound of children laughing. Maggie's eyes flew open. Laughing. When was the last time she'd heard her children laugh? She pushed herself up muscles, screaming in protest, and followed the sound into the main room. What she found there stopped her cold. Josiah McCann, the quiet, serious man from last night, was on his hands and knees with little Thomas on his back, galloping around the table while Rosie and the twins cheered. "Faster, Mr. Horse!" Thomas kicked his heels. "Faster!" "I'm going as fast as this old horse can go," Josiah grunted. "You're heavier than you look, son." Martha stood at the stove, shaking her head and smiling. "Man's lost his mind." Maggie couldn't speak, couldn't move. She just stood there watching this stranger play with her children like it was the most natural thing in the world. Eliza spotted her first. "Mama, you're awake." Josiah stopped mid-gallop, looking up with something like embarrassment. Thomas tumbled off his back, giggling. "Mrs. Sullivan." Josiah straightened, clearing his throat. "I was just the boy asked if... Please don't stop on my account." Maggie's voice came out strange, thick. "I haven't seen them this happy in months. Mama, Mr. Josiah says he's got real horses." Samuel's eyes were bright. "Can we see them? Can we—" "That's up to Mr. McCann." "Josiah," he corrected. "And sure, after breakfast. I could use some help with the feeding anyway." The children erupted into cheers. Maggie watched Josiah's face, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners, the softness that replaced his usual guarded expression, and felt something dangerous stir in her chest. "Don't," she told herself. "Don't you dare." Martha handed her a plate. "Eat. You're still too thin." They ate together around the big table, all 11 of them, plus Martha, and it felt so much like a family that Maggie had to look away. This wasn't real. This was temporary. She couldn't let herself forget that. "I've been thinking," Josiah said between bites, "about your situation." Maggie's stomach tightened. Here it comes. The boarding house in town, Mrs. Keller's place, she might have room. It ain't fancy, but it's warm and clean. And how would I pay for it? There's work at the laundry. Mrs. Chen is always looking for help. With 9 children who would watch them while I worked. Josiah paused. I hadn't thought of that. No one ever does. Maggie set down her fork. That's the problem, Mr. McCann. It's not just finding work. It's finding someone willing to hire a woman who comes with 9 mouths to feed. It's finding a place to live that doesn't cost more than I could ever earn. It's... She stopped, aware that her voice had risen, aware that the children were watching with worried eyes. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to... Don't apologize. Josiah's voice was quiet. You're right. I wasn't thinking it through. Mama... Rosie tugged her sleeve. Are we leaving? I don't know yet, baby. I don't want to leave. I like it here. Rosie. Me too. Thomas chimed in. Mr. Josiah's nice. And there's horses. And Martha makes good food, Mary added. One by one, all 9 children voiced their preference to stay. Maggie felt her face burn with shame. They were putting Josiah in an impossible position. Children, that's enough. We can't impose on Mr. McCann's hospitality indefinitely. Why not? The question came from Eliza, who rarely spoke against her mother. Why can't we stay? There's room here. We could help with the ranch. Mama could cook and clean like she said. Why do we have to leave? Because this isn't our home. It could be. The words hung in the air. Maggie didn't dare look at Josiah. Lizzie, that's not appropriate. Why not? Papa left. He's never coming back. And Mr. Josiah is alone, and we're alone. And... Eliza, enough. The girl fell silent, but her eyes burned with a stubborn fire that Maggie recognized. Her own fire reflected back. She's not wrong. Maggie's head snapped toward Josiah. What? About the logic of it. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at his plate, jaw tight. This place is too big for one man. I got more land than I can work, more space than I need. And you got 9 children who need feeding and a roof over their heads. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe there's an arrangement that could work. For both of us. Maggie's heart hammered. What kind of arrangement? You stay here. Help Martha with the house, the cooking, the young'uns. The older children help with chores, nothing too hard, just what they can manage. In exchange, you all have room and board. Nobody owes anybody anything. Just people helping each other. That's charity. No, that's partnership. Josiah finally met her eyes. You'd be working. The children would be working. It ain't charity if you earn your keep. And what do you get out of it? Company. The word came out rough, like it cost him something to say. This place gets quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Having people around might be good. Martha cleared her throat. He means he's been moping around here for 5 years, and it's driving me crazy. Some new faces would be a blessing. Martha. What? It's true. The older woman turned to Maggie. Think about it at least. Don't say no just because your pride's in the way. Maggie looked at her children. 9 faces, all watching her, all hoping. She thought about the road, the hunger, the town that had spit them out like poison. She thought about walking away from this warm cabin, this kind man, this impossible chance. I'll think about it, she heard herself say. Josiah nodded. That's all I'm asking. After breakfast, he took the children to see the horses. Maggie watched from the window as Samuel and Eliza helped him with the feeding, as Rosie and Mary petted the gentle mare's nose, as Thomas and the twins ran circles around the paddock. He's good with them. Maggie startled. Martha had appeared beside her. He always wanted children, the older woman continued. Him and Hannah, they tried for years. When she finally got pregnant, she shook her head. It destroyed him when he lost them both. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you'd be walking away from. That man out there, he's got more love in him than he knows what to do with. He's just scared of losing again. I'm not looking for love. Didn't say you were, but sometimes it finds us anyway. Maggie turned away from the window. I should help with the dishes. Running away from the conversation won't make it less true. I'm not running. I'm being practical. I've got 9 children, Mrs. Gideon. 9. No man in his right mind would want that burden. Josiah ain't most men. That's what he keeps saying. Maybe you should start believing it. Maggie didn't answer. She plunged her hands into the wash basin and scrubbed the dishes until her knuckles were raw. The morning passed quickly. The children were put to work small tasks suited to their ages. Eliza helped Martha with the laundry. Samuel learned to muck out stalls. The younger ones collected eggs and picked vegetables from the winter garden. Maggie watched them all, marveling at how naturally they fell into routine. This could work, she thought. This could actually work. Then the riders came. She heard the horses first, multiple sets of hooves pounding up the road. She was hanging wash on the line and her hands froze on a wet shirt as 3 men crested the hill. Josiah! Martha's voice sharp with warning. He was already moving, stepping between the house and the approaching riders, one hand resting on the pistol at his hip. Get the children inside, he called over his shoulder. Now! Maggie didn't need to be told twice. She ran toward the paddock where the older children were working. Eliza, Samuel, get your brothers and sisters. Into the house, quickly. Mama, what's... Now, Lizzie. Something in her voice brooked no argument. Eliza grabbed Samuel's hand, and together they rounded up the younger children, herding them toward the cabin. Maggie should have gone with them, should have hidden inside where it was safe. Instead, she found herself walking toward Josiah, toward the three men who had reined in their horses just a few feet away. Mrs. Sullivan. Josiah's voice was low warning. Go inside. I'm fine where I am. The lead rider laughed. He was a big man, heavy-set with a scar that ran from his eyebrow to his chin. Well, well, Josiah McCann's got himself a woman. Never thought I'd see the day. What do you want, Dawson? Just a friendly visit. Heard there was some excitement in Elk Ridge yesterday. Something about a beggar woman and a bunch of brats causing trouble. Maggie's blood went cold. Also heard you rode in like some kind of hero. Took 'em right out from under the town's nose. Dawson's eyes slid to Maggie, cold and assessing. This her the thief. She ain't a thief. That's not what Henderson says. Says she tried to steal from his store. Says you interfered with lawful business. Since when do you care about lawful business, Kurt? Dawson's smile didn't reach his eyes. Since it gives me an excuse to pay you a visit. You've been real unfriendly lately, McCann. Turned down my offer 3 times now. I told you, my land ain't for sale. Everything's for sale. It's just a matter of price. Dawson leaned forward in his saddle. Maybe the price just went up. Maybe now it includes keeping my mouth shut about you harboring a criminal. She's not a criminal. Courts don't care what you think. Woman tried to steal, whole town saw it. That's jail time, McCann. Maybe worse. And them kids, 9 of 'em ain't there. What happens to 9 children when their mama goes to prison? Maggie's legs threatened to buckle. Prison. She hadn't even considered she'd been so focused on surviving that she hadn't thought about legal consequences. Here's what's going to happen. Dawson's voice turned silky. You're going to think real hard about my offer. And while you're thinking, you're going to remember that I got friends in Elk Ridge. Friends who'd be real interested to know where that beggar woman ended up. You threatening me, Dawson? I'm giving you options. That's different. He tipped his hat, a mockery of courtesy. I'll be back in a week for your answer. And McCann. Think carefully. I ain't known for my patience. He wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. Maggie watched them go, her whole body trembling. Who was that? Josiah didn't answer right away. His jaw was tight, his hand still on his pistol. Josiah. Who was that man? Kurt Dawson. He owns most of the land around here. Been trying to buy me out for 2 years. And now he's going to use me against you. He's going to try. Then I have to leave. The words came out steadier than she felt. Tonight. Before he comes back. If I'm not here. If you're not here, he'll find another excuse. Josiah finally turned to face her. Men like Dawson don't need reasons. They want what they want, and they'll burn down anyone who gets in their way. You leaving won't change that. But it might protect you. I don't need protecting. You're one man against how many does he have? Enough. Then you do need protecting, and I won't have my children caught in the middle of some land war. It's not a war. Not yet. But it could be. Josiah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. You know what I see when I look at you, Maggie. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. I see a woman who's been fighting alone for too long. Fighting to feed her children, fighting to keep them safe, fighting just to survive another day. And I see someone who's so used to fighting alone that she doesn't know how to let anybody help. That's not, let me finish. He took a step closer. I ain't asking you to trust me completely. I know that takes time. But I'm asking you to stay. To give this a chance, because maybe we're both tired of being alone. Maybe we're both ready for something different. Maggie felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. And Dawson? I'll handle Dawson. How? I don't know yet, but I've faced worse." His lips curved slightly. "I survived the war. I survived losing Hannah. I reckon I can survive one greedy land baron." "You don't know that." "No. But I know I'm not going to let fear make my decisions for me. Not anymore." He held out his hand. "Stay, Maggie, please." She looked at his hand, calloused, scarred, steady. A hand that had lifted her from the mud. A hand that had played horse with her son this morning. Slowly, she reached out and took it. "1 week," she said. "We'll see how things stand in 1 week." "Fair enough." Neither of them let go right away. They just stood there in the pale morning light, two broken people holding on to each other, wondering if maybe they'd finally found something worth fighting for. The children emerged from the cabin, faces pressed to the windows, watching their mother hold hands with a stranger. "Mama?" Eliza's voice cautious. "Is everything okay?" Maggie released Josiah's hand and turned to her daughter. "Everything's fine, Lizzie. We're staying. For now." The cheers that erupted from inside could probably be heard in Elk Ridge. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Maggie rose early, helping Martha with breakfast. The older children did their chores without complaint, a miracle in itself. The younger ones played in the yard, their laughter echoing across the empty prairie like music. Josiah worked the land, mended fences, tended to the horses. Sometimes Samuel went with him, learning the basics of ranch work. Sometimes Eliza tagged along, asking questions about everything: the animals, the crops, the land itself. "She's smart," Josiah told Maggie one evening. "Quick learner, reminds me of—" He stopped. "Of who?" "No one." He turned away. "Just reminds me of someone." Maggie didn't push. She was learning that Josiah had depths he didn't share easily. Layers of pain and memory that surfaced at odd moments and then retreated again. But slowly, day by day, those layers began to peel back. He told her about the war one night after the children were asleep. About the things he'd seen, the friends he'd lost, the nightmares that still came sometimes. "I killed men," he said quietly. "Boys, some of them. Younger than Samuel. And I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to live with that. You were a soldier. You didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. I just made the wrong ones. And now I try to make better ones." She told him about William the next night. The whole truth this time, not the sanitized version she'd given the children. "He wasn't always bad," she said. "In the beginning, he was kind. Gentle. He used to sing to the babies every night until they fell asleep. But then the farm started failing, and the drinking started, and—" She trailed off. "He hit you. Once. Just once." Her hand went to her cheek unconsciously. "I told him if he ever did it again, I'd take the children and leave." And he stopped. He left instead. Said he couldn't stand looking at me anymore. Said I reminded him of everything he'd failed at. Maggie's voice hardened. He went to Montana to find gold, to prove he was still a man, and he never came back. "Do you miss him?" The question caught her off guard. Did she miss William? The man he'd been, maybe. The man she'd thought she was marrying all those years ago in Boston. "I miss who I thought he was," she said finally. "The real William, the one who drank and raged and left. I don't miss him at all." Josiah nodded slowly. "That's honest." "I'm tired of lying. To myself, to my children. I spent 18 months telling them Papa was coming back, that everything would be fine. And it was never true. They deserved better. They've got you. That's better than most. Sometimes I'm not sure that's enough." "It is." He said it with such certainty that Maggie almost believed him. "You're enough, Maggie. More than enough." The week passed too quickly. On the 6th day, Martha pulled Maggie aside. "He's going to ask you to marry him." Maggie nearly dropped the pot she was scrubbing. "What?" "Don't play dumb. I've seen how he looks at you, how you look at him. And with Dawson coming back tomorrow, he's going to ask." "That's insane. We've known each other a week. Time don't matter when it's right." How could it possibly be right? I'm a widow with 9 children. He's a man who finally has something to live for again. Martha's eyes were gentle. You've changed him, Maggie. All of you have. I haven't seen him smile this much in 5 years. That's not a reason to get married. No, but it's a start. Maggie couldn't sleep that night. She lay in the darkness listening to her children breathe and thought about Josiah's offer. Partnership, he'd called it. A practical arrangement. But there was nothing practical about the way her heart raced when he walked into a room. Nothing practical about the warmth that spread through her when he smiled at the children. Nothing practical about any of it. She'd sworn she'd never depend on a man again. Never put herself in a position where someone else held her fate in their hands. But this was different. Wasn't it, Mama? Eliza's whisper cut through the darkness. What is it, Lizzie? I can't sleep either. The girl sat up, moonlight catching her features. Are you scared about tomorrow? A little. Are you? Yes, but also... Eliza hesitated. Also excited. Is that wrong? Excited about what? About maybe staying. About Mr. Josiah. About... She stopped, and when she spoke again, her voice was very small. About maybe having a father again. Maggie's heart cracked. Lizzie, I know Papa's dead. I know Mr. Josiah isn't really our father. But he's nice to us, Mama. He listens when we talk. He plays with Thomas and Rosie. He teaches Samuel things. Her voice broke. He stays. Papa never stayed. But Mr. Josiah stays. Maggie reached for her daughter, pulling her close. I can't promise anything, Lizzie. Not yet. But I can promise I'll try to do what's best for all of us. Does that mean you might marry him? It means I don't know. But I'm not running away this time. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're going to face it together. Eliza was quiet for a moment. Then, I think he loves you, Mama. I see it in his face when he looks at you. You're 10 years old. What do you know about love? I know what it looks like when someone wants to protect you. I saw it with Papa sometimes before he changed, and I see it with Mr. Josiah all the time. Out of the mouths of babes, Maggie thought. Go to sleep, Lizzie. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Okay, Mama. Eliza settled back down. Mama? Yes. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. We all will. Maggie pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. I love you, Lizzie. Love you too, Mama. She lay awake for hours after that, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the morning would bring. When dawn finally came, Maggie rose to find Josiah already outside, standing at the fence watching the horizon. She went to stand beside him. They'll be here soon, he said. I know. Whatever happens, I want you to know. He stopped. Started again. These past days have meant something to me. You and the children. I haven't felt like this since Hannah. Josiah, let me say this, please. He turned to face her. I know it's too soon. I know you've got no reason to trust me beyond what I've shown you this week. But I need you to know that if you decide to stay, really stay, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. Maggie's breath caught. Is that a proposal? That's a promise. The proposal can wait until you're ready. She looked at this man, this kind, broken, beautiful man, and felt something shift inside her. Something that had been locked away for years, protected by walls of survival and necessity. And if I'm never ready, then we'll still be partners, still be family. Nothing has to change, unless you want it to. You'd do that, wait forever. I've got nothing but time. His lips curved slightly, and nowhere else I'd rather be. Maggie reached up and touched his face. His skin was rough beneath her fingers, weathered by sun and wind and years of hard living. I'm not ready yet, she said softly. But I'm not saying no. I'm saying, ask me again. Later. When this is over, I will. Promise. Promise. They stood there in the pale morning light, not quite touching, not quite apart, balanced on the edge of something new. Then the sound of hoofbeats shattered the silence. Dawson was coming, and everything was about to change. Dawson brought 6 men this time. Maggie counted them as they rode up 6 riders plus Dawson himself, all armed, all wearing the hard expressions of men who expected trouble and welcomed it. "Get inside," Josiah said without looking at her. "No." "Maggie." "I said no." She planted her feet. "This is about me. I'm not hiding while you face it alone." Josiah's jaw tightened, but there was no time to argue. Dawson had already reined in his horse, that same cold smile spreading across his scarred face. "McCann, I see you've made your decision." "I have. And my land ain't for sale. Not today. Not ever." Dawson sighed theatrical disappointment. "That's unfortunate. I was hoping you'd be reasonable." His eyes slid to Maggie. "Mrs. Sullivan, you're looking better than the last time I heard about you. Amazing what a few good meals will do for a woman." Maggie didn't flinch. "Mr. Dawson, I hear you've been busy. Playing house with McCann here. Got your children calling him Mr. Josiah like he's some kind of saint." Dawson leaned forward in his saddle. "Does he know about your husband? The real story?" Maggie's blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" "William Sullivan. Ran off to the goldfields, left his wife and 9 brats behind. That's the story you've been telling, ain't it? Poor abandoned widow, so tragic, so sympathetic." "My husband is dead." "Is he?" Dawson's smile widened. "Funny thing. I got a letter just yesterday from a friend in Helena. Says there's a man up there matching William Sullivan's description, alive and well, working a claim near the river." The world tilted. Maggie grabbed the fence post to steady herself. "You're lying." "Am I? Tall fellow, dark hair, got a scar on his chin from a childhood accident. Sound familiar?" Maggie couldn't breathe. "William had a scar like that. A small one barely visible from falling off a horse when he was 12. Even if that's true." Josiah's voice cut through her panic, steady and hard. "It doesn't change anything." "Doesn't it?" Dawson laughed. "This woman's been letting you believe she's a widow. Been playing on your sympathies, your guilt, your need to save somebody. But she ain't a widow, McCann. She's just a wife whose husband didn't want her anymore." "That's not—" Maggie started. "I got the letter right here." Dawson pulled a folded paper from his coat. "Want to read it? Want to see what your husband's been up to while you've been starving in the dirt?" "Don't." Josiah stepped forward. "Whatever game you're playing, Dawson, it stops now." "No game, just facts." Dawson tossed the letter. It landed in the mud at Maggie's feet. "William Sullivan is alive. He's been alive this whole time. And according to my friend, he's got no interest in being found. Said something about his wife being a nagging burden and his children being too many mouths to feed. Said he was better off starting fresh." Maggie's knees buckled. She would have fallen if Josiah hadn't caught her. "That's a lie," she whispered. He died. There was a letter." "A letter from who?" "Some stranger claiming to know what happened." "Anyone can write a letter, Mrs. Sullivan. Anyone can tell any story they want." "Why are you doing this?" Josiah's voice was dangerous now. "What do you want?" "I told you what I want. Your land. And now I've got leverage." Dawson's eyes were ice. "See if William Sullivan is alive that makes Mrs. Sullivan here a married woman. A married woman living in sin with another man. In Montana territory, that's called adultery. And adultery is a crime." "We haven't. There's been nothing. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe. And right now, I've got a whole town ready to believe that Josiah McCann took another man's wife into his home, into his bed. You son of a—" "Careful." Dawson's men had their hands on their guns. "You're outnumbered, McCann, and outmaneuvered. Here's the deal. You sign over the land, I keep my mouth shut. Mrs. Sullivan gets to keep her reputation such as it is. Your little family stays together. Everybody wins. And if I refuse, then I ride into Elk Ridge and tell everyone what I know. Sheriff Briggs is a good friend of mine. He'll have Mrs. Sullivan arrested before sundown. And them 9 children. They'll be split up, sent to different families scattered across the territory. You'll never see any of them again. Maggie's heart stopped. You can't do that. I can do whatever I want, ma'am. That's what money buys you. Dawson's smile was pure poison. You've got until sunset to decide. I'll be at the saloon in town. Come find me when you're ready to be reasonable. He wheeled his horse and rode off his men, following like a pack of wolves. Maggie stood frozen, the letter still lying in the mud at her feet. Don't. Josiah's voice was gentle. Don't read it. I have to know. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters to me. She bent down and picked up the letter. Her hands shook so badly she could barely unfold it. The words blurred together. Helena, William Sullivan, alive, working a claim, wants nothing to do with his old life. Maggie, Josiah's hand on her shoulder. Look at me. She couldn't tear her eyes from the damning words. Even if this is true, even if William is alive, it doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Her voice came out strange, hollow. I'm not a widow. I'm an abandoned wife. Everything I told you, everything I believed, was what you knew at the time. You thought he was dead. You had every reason to think that. But he's not dead. He's alive. He just didn't want us. The words hit harder than she expected. She'd known somewhere deep down that William might have left them on purpose, that the letter about his death might have been a convenient lie. But knowing it for certain, having it confirmed in black and white, Mama, Eliza's voice. Maggie spun to find her daughter standing in the doorway, face pale, eyes wide. Lizzie, go back inside. I heard what that man said about Papa. Eliza's voice trembled. Is it true? Is Papa alive? I don't know, baby. He left us on purpose. Tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks. He's alive, and he just didn't want us. Lizzie, how could he do that? The girl's voice rose to a scream. How could he leave us to starve? We almost died, Mama. We were eating rotten food and sleeping in the dirt, and he was alive the whole time. I don't know if it's true. It is true. I can see it in your face. You believe it. Eliza was sobbing now. He never loved us. He never loved any of us. And now that man is going to take us away, and it's all Papa's fault. No one is taking you away. Josiah stepped forward, his voice firm. Eliza, look at me. The girl turned her face wet with tears. I'm not going to let anyone hurt your family. Not Dawson, not the sheriff, not anyone. Do you understand? How can you stop them? You heard what he said. He's got money and friends and I've got something he doesn't. What? Josiah knelt down to Eliza's level. I've got nothing left to lose. When a man's got nothing to lose, he's the most dangerous thing in the world. Dawson doesn't understand that, but he's about to. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. He looked up at Maggie. Get the children ready. Pack whatever you can. We might need to move fast. Josiah, you can't fight all of them. I'm not planning to fight. I'm planning to end this. He stood. There's something Dawson doesn't know. Something that changes everything. What? I know his secret. The reason he wants this land so badly. Josiah's eyes hardened. And I know someone who can prove it. Who? His brother. Maggie stared at him. Dawson has a brother. Had. Earl Dawson. They had a falling out 5 years ago over their father's inheritance. Earl got nothing. Kurt got everything. But Earl knows where the bodies are buried literally. Kurt didn't get rich through honest work. He got rich by eliminating his competition. How do you know this? Because Earl told me. right before he disappeared. Josiah grabbed his coat from the fence. I never had proof, never had a reason to use what I knew. But if Kurt wants to play dirty, I can play dirty too. Where is Earl now? If he's still alive. Hiding, somewhere Kurt can't find him. Josiah mounted his horse. I've got 3 hours until sunset. That's enough time to ride to the Patterson place. Old man Patterson was friends with Earl. He'll know where to look. And if he doesn't, then I'll think of something else. Josiah looked down at her. Trust me, Maggie. I'm not going to let him win. Be careful. Always am. He rode off, and Maggie was left standing in the yard with the letter still clutched in her hand and her daughter crying beside her. Come on, Lizzie. She put her arm around Eliza. Let's go inside. We need to tell the others. Tell them what? That Papa abandoned us, that we might get taken away, that we're going to fight. That's what we tell them. The next 3 hours were the longest of Maggie's life. She gathered the children and told them as much as she dared. That a bad man was trying to hurt them. That Mr. Josiah had gone to get help. That they needed to be brave and stay together no matter what. The little ones didn't understand. Thomas asked if the bad man was going to steal their horses. Rosie wanted to know if they'd still have dinner. The twins just clung to each other, sensing the fear in the air, even if they couldn't name it. But the older children understood. Samuel's face went hard in a way that made him look 10 years older. Mary started crying quietly, trying to hide it from the younger ones. Eliza just sat by the window watching the road, waiting for Josiah to come back. Martha moved through the house like a general preparing for battle. She packed food, gathered blankets, loaded the old shotgun that hung over the fireplace. You know how to use that? Maggie asked. Taught myself after my husband died. Never thought I'd need it. Martha's jaw was set. Today I might. The sun crept lower. 3 hours became 2. 2 became 1. Josiah didn't come back. Something's wrong. Eliza's voice was thin with fear. He should be back by now. The Patterson place is far. He probably just... Rider coming. Samuel's shout brought everyone to the windows. Maggie's heart leaped, but it wasn't Josiah's horse. It was a different animal, smaller, darker. The rider was a woman. She pulled up in front of the house and dismounted. Maggie met her at the door, heart pounding. Mrs. Sullivan. The woman was young, maybe 25, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. I'm Sarah Patterson. Josiah sent me. Where is he? Dawson's men intercepted him on the road. They took him to the old mill outside town. Maggie's blood turned to ice. Is he alive? He was when I left. But Dawson's not going to wait until sunset anymore. He's moving now. What does he want? He wants Josiah to sign the land over. If he doesn't... Sarah's voice faltered. Dawson's done this before. Made people disappear. Made it look like accidents. We have to help him. That's why I'm here. Josiah told me to get you and the children out. Said there's a cabin in the mountains 3 hours north. You'll be safe there until... I'm not running. Maggie's voice surprised even herself. I'm not leaving him. Mrs. Sullivan? He saved my life. He saved my children. I'm not going to abandon him to that monster. What can you do? You're one woman against... I'm a mother. Maggie's eyes were steel. Dawson's never met anything as dangerous as a mother protecting her family. She turned to Martha. Can you take the children to that cabin? Maggie, you can't. Someone has to stay with them. Keep them safe. That has to be you, Martha. Please. The older woman's face crumpled. What are you going to do? Something stupid, probably. Maggie grabbed her coat. But I'm done running. I'm done being helpless. If William really abandoned us, then fine. That's his choice. But I get to make choices too. And I choose to fight. Mama, no. Eliza grabbed her arm. You can't go. What if something happens to you? Then you take care of your brothers and sisters. You're strong enough, Lizzie. Stronger than you know. I'm not. I'm scared. Being scared and being brave aren't opposites, baby. They're the same thing. Maggie knelt down and took her daughter's face in her hands. I love you. All of you. More than anything in this world. And that love is going to bring me back. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. She kissed Eliza's forehead, then gathered each of her children for a quick embrace. Thomas, Rosie, the twins, Samuel, Mary, little William. Baby Hannah still too young to understand but clinging to her mother anyway. Be good, Maggie told them. Mind Martha. And remember, no matter what happens, we're still a family. Nothing can change that. Then she turned to Sarah Patterson. Take me to the mill. They rode hard. Sarah explained as they went. Earl Dawson had been dead for 3 years, killed by his own brother. But before he died, he'd left evidence. Documents, letters, proof of Kurt's crimes. He'd given them to Old Man Patterson for safekeeping. Josiah was supposed to get the documents and bring them to the sheriff. A different sheriff in the next county over. Someone Dawson doesn't own. Sarah's voice was tight. But Dawson must have had someone watching the roads. They grabbed Josiah before he even reached our place. Does Dawson know about the evidence? He knows it exists. He's been looking for it for years. That's the real reason he wants Josiah's land. He thinks it's hidden somewhere on the property. Is it? No. It's been at our place the whole time. My father's been waiting for the right moment to use it. And now? Now we don't have a choice. The mill appeared as the sun touched the horizon. An abandoned building falling apart, isolated from everything. Perfect for making people disappear. Sarah reined in her horse. There's a back entrance. Through the creek bed. I can get you inside without being seen. And then what? Then you create a distraction. Get Dawson's attention. Give my father time to reach the county sheriff. Your father... He rode out 2 hours ago. He should be there by now. But the sheriff won't move without proof of immediate danger. If you can keep Dawson talking, keep him focused on you, it might buy enough time. And if it doesn't? Sarah didn't answer. They crept through the creek bed mud, soaking through Maggie's shoes, until they reached a gap in the mill's foundation. Inside, she could hear voices. Last chance, McCann. Sign the papers or this gets ugly. Dawson's voice. Cold. Final. Go to hell. Josiah. Still alive. Still fighting. The sound of a fist hitting flesh. Maggie's stomach turned. Wrong answer. She slipped through the gap and into the shadows of the mill. In the dim light, she could see Josiah tied to a chair, blood running from a cut above his eye. Dawson stood over him, flanked by 2 of his men. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Dawson pulled out a knife. I don't want to kill you, McCann. Dead men can't sign documents. But there are other ways to convince someone. Fingers, for instance. You've got 10 of them. How many do you really need? Touch me and you'll regret it. Big words for a man tied to a chair. I'm not the one you should be worried about. No, then who? Me. Maggie stepped out of the shadows. Dawson spun surprise flashing across his face before he controlled it. Mrs. Sullivan, this is unexpected. Let him go. Dawson laughed. Or what, you'll glare at me. You're not exactly in a position to make demands. Neither are you. Maggie's voice was steady. She didn't know where the courage was coming from, maybe from the same place that had kept her walking across Nebraska, kept her children alive, kept her standing when the whole world wanted her to fall. The county sheriff is on his way. He's got evidence of every crime you've ever committed. Murder, theft, bribery. By this time tomorrow you'll be the one in chains. Something flickered in Dawson's eyes. You're bluffing. Am I? Earl kept records, Dawson. He wrote everything down. Every body you buried. Every witness you paid off. Every dollar you stole. She took a step closer. Did you really think he'd let you kill him without leaving something behind? Earl's documents don't exist. They exist, and they're on their way to the sheriff right now. Dawson's face twisted. You're lying. You have to be lying. There's one way to find out. Let Josiah go. Walk away from this. And maybe I'll tell the sheriff you cooperated in the end. And if I don't, then I'll make sure they know everything. Every detail. Including what you did to the Miller family 3 years ago. What was it, 5 people including the children? Dawson's face went pale. How do you know about that? Earl was very thorough. For a long moment, nobody moved. Maggie's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her face calm, her voice steady. Everything depended on this. Everything. Then Dawson smiled. Nice try, Mrs. Sullivan, but I don't believe you. He turned to his men. Kill them both. The men drew their guns, and that's when the door burst open. Nobody move. Sheriff's deputies flooded the mill, weapons drawn. Behind them came a man Maggie didn't recognize, an older gentleman with silver hair and hard eyes. Kurt Dawson. The man's voice rang with authority. You're under arrest for the murders of Earl Dawson, Thomas Miller, and 6 others. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Dawson's face contorted with rage. This isn't over. You can't prove anything. Actually, we can. The sheriff held up a leather satchel. Your brother was very thorough indeed. Dawson lunged for Maggie, whether to use her as a hostage or simply to hurt someone she'd never know, but Josiah was faster. Despite being tied to a chair, he threw himself sideways, crashing into Dawson and sending them both to the ground. Deputies swarmed them. Dawson was pulled away screaming threats while someone cut Josiah's bonds. Maggie ran to him. Are you all right? Your face. I'm fine. Josiah touched her cheek with bloody fingers. You came for me. Of course I did. You were supposed to run, supposed to take the children, and I don't run anymore. Maggie took his hands in hers. I'm done running, Josiah. I'm done being afraid. Whatever comes next, I want to face it with you. Even if William's alive, even if you're technically still married, even then, she squeezed his hands. We'll figure it out, together. Josiah stared at her for a long moment. Then, despite the blood and the chaos and the deputies everywhere, he smiled. You know what, Maggie Sullivan? What? You're the bravest woman I've ever met. I'm the stupidest woman you've ever met. Coming here alone with no weapon, no plan. You had a plan. Create a distraction. Buy time. His smile widened. It worked. I got lucky. We both did. The sheriff approached them. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm Sheriff Reynolds from Carter County. I need to take your statement about what happened here. Of course. And Mr. McCann, you'll need to see a doctor. That head wound looks serious. I've had worse. Be that as it may, I'm not letting you ride home until someone checks you out. The sheriff turned back to Maggie. Ma'am, I also have some news about your husband. Maggie's heart stopped. William? We sent a telegram to Helena based on the information in Dawson's letter. Got a response an hour ago. The sheriff's expression was unreadable. William Sullivan is dead, ma'am. Has been for 8 months. Mining accident. The man Dawson's friend described was someone else entirely. Maggie couldn't speak. Dawson was lying, Josiah asked. Dawson was bluffing. He didn't have any real information about Mr. Sullivan. Just made up a story he thought would hurt. The sheriff shook his head. Man was desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. So William really is dead. Maggie's voice came out strange, distant. I'm sorry, ma'am. I know that must be difficult news. Was it difficult? She'd thought he was dead for months, then thought he might be alive. Now he was dead again. She didn't know what to feel. Maggie. Josiah's hand on her arm. You okay? I don't know. She looked up at him. I think I need to see my children. Then let's go home. Home. The word had never sounded so beautiful. They rode back together, Josiah and Maggie, as the last light faded from the sky. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Everything had changed. Everything was possible now. And somewhere in the mountains, 9 children were waiting for their mother to come back. She'd promised she would. And Maggie Sullivan kept her promises. The cabin in the mountains was small, barely visible against the dark tree line, but candlelight flickered in the window like a beacon. Maggie was off her horse before it fully stopped. Mama! The door flew open. 9 children poured out a wave of tears and relief and desperate embraces. Maggie fell to her knees and gathered as many of them as she could, holding on like she'd never let go. You came back. Eliza's voice broke. You promised and you came back. I told you I would. I was so scared, Mama. We heard horses and I thought. I'm here. I'm here, baby. It's over. Martha appeared in the doorway, shotgun still in her hands, tears streaming down her weathered face. Thank God Almighty. It's done. Josiah dismounted, slowly wincing. The cut on his head had stopped bleeding, but he looked exhausted. Dawson's in custody. He won't hurt anyone ever again. And William? Martha's voice was careful. The letter? A lie. William's been dead for 8 months. Dawson made up the whole thing to hurt us. Maggie felt Eliza stiffen in her arms. Papa's really dead, the girl whispered. For sure this time. For sure, Lizzie. I'm sorry. Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that broke Maggie's heart. I'm not. Lizzie. I'm not sorry, Mama. Is that wrong? Eliza pulled back, her face wet with tears. He left us. He let us starve. And now I'm supposed to be sad he's dead. I can't. I can't be sad anymore. You don't have to be sad. You can feel whatever you feel. I feel angry. I feel relieved. I feel... Eliza's voice cracked. I feel like maybe now we can stop waiting for someone who was never coming back. Maggie had no words. She just held her daughter while the other children pressed close, a tangle of bodies and warmth and shared grief. Josiah stood apart, giving them space, but Rosie broke away from the group and ran to him. Mr. Josiah, you're hurt. I'm fine, sweetheart. No, you're not. Your face is all bloody. Rosie grabbed his hand and tugged. Come inside. Martha can fix it. Rosie, I don't think... Please. The little girl looked up at him with those big eyes. You saved Mama. The least we can do is fix your face. Josiah glanced at Maggie. She nodded. All right, he said softly. Lead the way. They all went inside together. Martha cleaned Josiah's wound while the children watched, firing questions at him about what happened. He answered simply, leaving out the worst parts, making it sound like a minor disagreement that the sheriff had resolved. But Samuel wasn't fooled. Dawson was going to kill you, wasn't he? Josiah hesitated. He was considering it. And Mama stopped him. Your Mama was very brave. She's always brave. Samuel's voice was fierce. Even when she's scared, she's brave. That's the only kind of brave there is, son. Maggie watched the exchange, her heart full to bursting. This man, this quiet, broken, beautiful man, was talking to her son like Samuel mattered. Like his thoughts and feelings were worth acknowledging. William had never done that. William had barely noticed the children at all toward the end. Mama, Thomas tugged her sleeve. Are we going home now? Home. The word hit differently now. I don't know yet, baby. We need to talk about some things first. What things? Grown-up things. You don't need to worry about them. But I want to know. Thomas's lip trembled. Every time grown-ups talk about things, we have to leave. I don't want to leave again. Thomas. I like Mr. Josiah's house. I like the horses and the chickens and Martha's cooking. I like having a bed that's warm." His voice rose. "Why do we always have to leave the good places? Why can't we ever stay?" Maggie pulled him close. "We're going to talk about staying, I promise." "Really? Really?" She looked over Thomas's head and found Josiah watching her. Something passed between them, a question, an answer, a promise, still unspoken. Tonight, she thought. Tonight, we talk about staying. The children fell asleep in piles, exhausted from fear and relief, and the emotional whiplash of the day. Maggie tucked them in, one by one, kissing foreheads, whispering reassurances. When she finally emerged from the back room, Josiah was waiting by the fire. "They all right?" "They will be, eventually." She sat down across from him. "How's your head?" "Hurts like hell, but I've had worse." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." He almost smiled. "Maggie, we need to talk." "I know." "About what happens now. About what you want." "I know what I want." The words came easier than she expected. "I want to stay. Here with you, if that's still what you're offering." "It is. But there's something you should know first." Maggie's heart stuttered. "What?" Josiah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I lied to you. Not about anything important, not about my feelings or my intentions, but about something that might matter." "What did you lie about?" "My wife, Hannah." He stared into the fire. "She didn't just die in childbirth. She died because of me." Maggie's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "We were out riding. She was 7 months along and the doctor had told her to take it easy, but Hannah never listened to anyone. She wanted to see the sunset from the ridge and I didn't stop her. I should have stopped her." Josiah. "The horse spooked, threw her. I got to her as fast as I could, but it was too late. The baby was coming, and something was wrong, and by the time I got her back to the house..." He stopped, swallowed. "She bled to death in my arms, asking me why I didn't protect her, why I let her ride. That wasn't your fault. It was my fault. I knew better. I should have said no. I should have..." "Josiah." Maggie moved to sit beside him. "Look at me." He didn't. "Look at me." Slowly he raised his head. His eyes were wet. "Hannah made her own choice. You didn't force her onto that horse. You didn't spook the animal. Sometimes terrible things happen and it's nobody's fault. It's just life being cruel." "I've told myself that 1,000 times. It never feels true." "Then let me tell you, and maybe if you hear it from someone who understands loss, maybe it'll start to feel true. You understand loss. I lost my husband twice. Once when he left, and once when I found out he was really gone. I lost my home, lost my pride, almost lost my children." She took his hand. "And through all of it, I kept asking myself what I did wrong, what I could have done differently, whether any of it was my fault. Was it? No, and neither was what happened to Hannah." Josiah was quiet for a long time. His hand trembled in hers. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. "Why aren't you running?" "Because I'm done running, and because..." She hesitated. "Because I think maybe you've been running too, hiding out here alone, punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. And maybe it's time we both stopped." "You think we can do that? Just..." "Stop. I think we can try, together." The fire crackled. Somewhere in the back room, one of the children murmured in their sleep, "I love you." The words came out before Josiah seemed to realize he was saying them. His eyes widened like he'd shocked himself. "I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I need you to know what I feel for you isn't just gratitude or loneliness or convenience. It's real. And it's the first real thing I've felt since Hannah died." Maggie's heart pounded. "Josiah, you don't have to say it back. I don't expect you to. I just needed you to know before you made any decisions about staying. I needed you to know what you'd be getting into." A man who loves me. A broken man. A man with ghosts. A man who might never fully heal. Then we match. Maggie squeezed his hand. Because I'm broken too. And I have ghosts. And I don't know if I'll ever fully heal. But I know I want to try. With you. Is that a yes to staying? That's a yes. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Josiah pulled her close, and Maggie buried her face against his chest, and they held each other in the firelight, while the world outside grew quiet and still. I have a question, Maggie said after a while. Anything. When you asked me to stay, was that a proposal? Josiah pulled back to look at her. Would you want it to be, I don't know, maybe, someday? Then someday I'll ask you properly, when you're ready, when you've had time to grieve and heal and figure out what you really want. What if what I really want is you? Then I'll be here. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'm not going anywhere, Maggie. Not ever again. They slept that night in separate rooms. Propriety demanded it, especially with the children there, but Maggie fell asleep feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Truly, completely safe. Morning brought new challenges. Word had spread about Dawson's arrest. By the time they made it back to Josiah's ranch, a crowd had gathered. Townsfolk from Elk Ridge, neighbors from surrounding farms, even Sheriff Reynolds from Carter County. Mrs. Sullivan? The sheriff tipped his hat. I'm glad to see you well. Thank you, Sheriff. What's happening here? Folks heard about what you did at the mill. Wanted to come pay their respects. What I did. Faced down Dawson alone. Bought time for the deputies to arrive. Saved Mr. McCann's life. Reynolds smiled slightly. That's the story going around anyway. That's not I didn't. You're a hero, ma'am. Whether you want to be or not. Maggie didn't know what to say. A week ago, this town had watched her collapse in the mud and done nothing. Now they were calling her a hero. But not everyone was welcoming. Mrs. Harrington pushed through the crowd, her face pinched with disapproval. I heard about your little adventure, Mrs. Sullivan. Very dramatic. But let's not pretend this changes anything. Excuse me. You're still a vagrant, still a woman with 9 illegitimate children. My children are not illegitimate. Living in sin with a man you barely know. Dawson may be in jail, but that doesn't make you respectable. Maggie felt Josiah tense beside her. She put a hand on his arm. Mrs. Harrington, I don't particularly care what you think is respectable. My children are fed, clothed, and safe. That's all that matters to me. And when Mr. McCann tires of you, when he throws you out like your husband did, that's enough. Josiah's voice cut through the crowd. Mrs. Harrington, I've tolerated your nastiness for 5 years because I didn't care what you said about me. But you will not speak to Maggie that way. Not now, not ever. Mr. McCann, I intend to marry this woman, as soon as she'll have me. And when I do, she'll be Mrs. McCann, and you'll treat her with the respect that deserves. Do I make myself clear? The crowd murmured. Mrs. Harrington's face went red. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. She has 9 children. I know, I've counted. Josiah put his arm around Maggie. 9 children who need a home and a father, and I intend to give them both. Mrs. Harrington sputtered. This is none of your concern. Sheriff Reynolds stepped forward. Mrs. Sullivan helped bring down a murderer. That's more than most folks in this town have ever done. I'd think carefully about how you treat her going forward. The banker's wife turned and stalked away, but her departure didn't dampen the mood. Other townsfolk pressed forward, offering congratulations, shaking hands, welcoming Maggie like she'd always been one of them. Funny how that works, Martha muttered. A week ago they left you in the dirt. Now they're acting like you're best friends. People are complicated. People are stupid. But they're your neighbors now, so I suppose you'll have to put up with them. The next few days passed in a blur. The ranch came alive with activity. The children explored every corner, claimed their favorite spots, started building the small routines that would become their new normal. Samuel helped Josiah with the horses. Eliza took over organizing the pantry. The younger ones ran wild, their laughter echoing across the prairie. Maggie worked alongside Martha, cooking and cleaning, falling into a rhythm that felt natural and right. Sometimes she'd catch Josiah watching her from across the room, and her heart would do that little flip that still surprised her. On the 5th day, Eliza found her alone in the kitchen. "Mama, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Lizzie." "When you marry Mr. Josiah—" The girl hesitated. "Do we have to call him Papa?" Maggie set down the pot she'd been scrubbing. "What do you want to call him?" "I don't know. It feels wrong to call him Papa. Papa was our real father, even if he wasn't a good one." "That's fair. But calling him Mr. Josiah forever seems strange too, like he's not really family. What about just Josiah? No, Mr., just his name." Eliza considered this. "That might work, for now. And later, if you want to call him something else when you're ready, you can. There's no rush, Lizzie. He's not trying to replace your father. He's just trying to be someone you can count on." "I know." Eliza was quiet for a moment. "I like him, Mama. I know I shouldn't trust him so fast. You always said not to trust too easy, but I can't help it. He's kind, and he looks at you like you're the most important person in the world." "He does. You don't see it because you're not watching, but I watch. I always watch." Eliza's voice grew fierce. "Papa never looked at you like that. Not even once. Mr. Josiah, he looks at you like you matter. Like we all matter." Maggie's eyes burned. "When did you get so wise, Lizzie?" "I had to grow up fast. You know that." "I know. And I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just be happy, Mama. That's all I want. For you to finally be happy." Maggie pulled her daughter close. "I'm getting there, baby. I'm getting there." That night, Josiah found her on the porch watching the stars. Room for one more, always. He settled beside her close, but not touching. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "I talked to Reverend Cooper today," Josiah said finally, "about the wedding." Maggie's heart skipped. "You did?" "Wanted to make sure everything would be proper, legal, official." He paused. "He said we need to wait 30 days. Something about making sure there are no outstanding claims on your previous marriage. And after 30 days, he'll marry us, if that's what you want." "It's what I want." "You're sure you've only known me 2 weeks?" "I've only known you 2 weeks, but I know you better than I knew William after 5 years of marriage. You're kind, you're honest, you're patient with my children. You risked your life to save us." Maggie turned to face him. "What more do I need to know?" "That I snore, that I'm grumpy before my morning coffee, that I have nightmares sometimes and wake up shouting. I can live with all of that. That I'm scared, terrified actually, of losing you, of failing you, of not being good enough for 9 children who deserve the world. Josiah." Maggie took his hand. "I'm scared too, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." "That doesn't make any sense. Love never does." He laughed softly. "No, I suppose it doesn't." They sat together as the stars wheeled overhead, and Maggie thought about all the nights she'd spent on the road, hungry and afraid, wondering if they'd survive until morning. She'd never imagined she'd end up here, in a warm house with a good man building something new from the ashes of everything she'd lost. But here she was. And for the first time, in longer than she could remember, she was grateful. The 30 days passed faster than expected. The children adapted to their new life with the resilience that only children possessed. Samuel became Josiah's shadow, soaking up everything he could learn about ranching. Mary discovered a talent for baking that rivaled Martha's. The twins turned the barn into their personal playground. and Rosie adopted every animal on the property, giving them all names and elaborate backstories. Even Eliza softened slowly, the hard edges of her suspicion wearing down against the steady warmth of their new home. "Josiah's teaching me to ride," she reported one evening, almost smiling. "He says I'm a natural." "He's right, you are." "Mama," Eliza's voice dropped, "I think I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To call him something else. Not Papa, that still doesn't feel right. But maybe—" She hesitated. "Maybe Pa." "It's different enough. And it feels like what he is. Not a replacement. Just something new." Maggie's eyes filled with tears. "I think he'd like that, Lizzie." "Can you tell him I'm too embarrassed?" "I'll tell him." That night, when Maggie shared the news, Josiah had to turn away for a moment. When he faced her again, his eyes were wet. "She said that she wants to call me Pa." "She does, if you're okay with it." "Okay with it." His voice broke. "Maggie, I've been dreaming about hearing that word for 5 years, thinking that I'd lost my chance to—" He couldn't finish. Maggie pulled him close and held him while he cried, and she thought about how grief and joy could exist in the same moment, filling the same heart. 2 days before the wedding, a letter arrived. Martha brought it in, her face troubled. "It's from Helena." Maggie's stomach dropped. "Helena?" "Return address is some lawyer's office. Thompson and Associates." Maggie took the envelope with trembling hands. Helena was where William had died. A lawyer's letter could only mean one thing. She opened it and read, and the world tilted sideways. "Maggie." Josiah was at her side. "What is it?" She handed him the letter without speaking. He read it once, then, again, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "This says—" "I know what it says. William had a claim, a mining claim, and it's worth $12,000. I know." Josiah set the letter down. "Maggie, this changes everything." "Does it? You're rich, or you will be once the estate clears. You don't need—" He stopped. "Don't need what?" "You don't need me. Not for security, not for survival. You could go anywhere, do anything." Maggie looked at him for a long moment. "You're right," she said. "I don't need you." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, resignation. "But I want you." She took his hand. "I've spent my whole life needing things, needing food, shelter, safety. And now, for the first time, I have a choice. A real choice. I can go anywhere, do anything just like you said. And I choose here. I choose you. I choose this family we're building." She squeezed his hand. "Don't you understand, Josiah? This money doesn't change anything. It just proves that what we have is real. That I'm staying because I want to, not because I have to." "You mean that?" "With everything I am." Josiah pulled her close, his heart pounding against hers. "What are we going to do with $12,000? "We're going to build something. A real home. A future. Something our children can inherit." Maggie pulled back to look at him. "And we're going to help other people. Other widows. Other families who are starving and scared and have nowhere to go. We're going to be for them what you were for us. You want to spend your fortune on strangers. I want to spend my fortune on kindness, the same kindness that saved my life." Josiah stared at her like she was something miraculous, something impossible. "I love you," he said. "I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I love you, Maggie Sullivan." "Good," she smiled. "Because you're stuck with me now. Me and 9 children, and apparently $12,000 of responsibility. I can think of worse fates." "So can I." She kissed him softly. "Now come on, we've got a wedding to prepare for." 2 days later, under a clear Montana sky, Maggie Sullivan became Maggie McCann. The ceremony was simple, just Reverend Cooper Martha as witness, and the children arranged in a semicircle around them. Maggie wore a dress that Sarah Patterson had lent her, white cotton, with blue flowers, not fancy, but clean and beautiful. Josiah wore his best shirt, freshly pressed, and looked at her like she was the first sunrise after a long, dark winter. "Do you, Josiah McCann, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Margaret Sullivan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Maggie looked at her children, at Eliza, who was crying silently, at Samuel, who stood straight and proud, at all of them, her 9 miracles, who had survived hunger and cold and cruelty and somehow still believed in love. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The children erupted into cheers. Rosie threw wildflowers. Thomas jumped up and down. Baby Hannah clapped her chubby hands without understanding why. And Josiah kissed her gentle and sure, while the Montana wind sang through the grass, and the future stretched out before them like a promise waiting to be kept. That night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Maggie stood at the window of her new bedroom, their bedroom now, and watched the stars. Josiah came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Any regrets?" "Not a single one." "It's not too late to run." "I told you. I'm done running." She leaned back against him. "This is where I belong. With you. With our family." "Our family." He said the words like he was testing them. "I like the sound of that." "So do I." They stood together in the quiet darkness, and Maggie thought about the road that had brought her here. The hunger and fear. The rotten apples. The town that had turned its back. And the stranger who had really seen her when no one else would. "Josiah. Thank you." "For what?" "For stopping. For helping. For seeing a starving woman and her children and deciding we were worth saving." "You saved yourselves, Maggie." "I just opened the door." "That's not true, and you know it." "Maybe." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "But the point is, you're not starving anymore. You're not running. You're home." Home. The word settled into her bones like warmth, like healing, like finally finding what she'd been looking for all along. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm home." 3 years changed everything. The ranch that had once been Josiah's lonely sanctuary now burst with life. Children's laughter echoed from every corner. Horses nickered in the expanded stables. Chickens pecked in the yard, while the family dog, a mutt named Lucky, that Thomas had found half dead on the road, barked at anything that moved. And Maggie stood at the center of it all, watching her family thrive. "Ma," Samuel's voice carried across the yard. "The Patterson boy is here." Maggie wiped her hands on her apron and walked out to meet their visitor. Young Daniel Patterson. Sarah's younger brother had become a regular fixture at the ranch. He came twice a week to help with the horses, and Maggie suspected his dedication had less to do with the animals and more to do with Eliza. "Morning, Mrs. McCann." Daniel tipped his hat cheeks slightly red. "Morning, Daniel. Eliza's in the barn." "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you, ma'am." He practically ran toward the barn, and Maggie had to suppress a smile. "That boy's got it bad." Martha appeared beside her, shaking her head. "He's been mooning over Lizzie for 6 months now." "She could do worse." "She could do better, too. The Patterson boy's nice enough, but he ain't exactly ambitious. Eliza will make her own choice, when she's ready." "If you say so." Martha squinted toward the road. "Speaking of visitors, looks like we've got more coming." A wagon approached, kicking up dust. Maggie recognized it immediately, the supply wagon from Elk Ridge, driven by Mr. Henderson himself. 3 years ago, that man had thrown her into the mud and called her a thief. Now, he delivered their supplies personally, always with a smile, always with an extra something for the children. Funny how money changed people's attitudes. "Mrs. McCann." Henderson pulled up and hopped down. "Got your order here, plus a letter from the governor's office." Maggie's heart stuttered. The governor. Yes, ma'am. Looks official. She took the envelope with trembling hands. She'd written to the territorial governor 6 months ago, proposing a program to help destitute widows and orphans. She'd used part of William's inheritance to establish a small fund, but she'd wanted government support to expand it. She'd heard nothing back. Until now. Well, Martha peered over her shoulder. What's it say? Maggie tore open the envelope and read. Then read again. Maggie, you've gone pale. Is it bad news? No. Her voice came out strange. It's good news. Very good news. What kind of good news? The governor approved the proposal. He's matching our funds. And he wants me to come to Helena next month to receive an official commendation. Martha's eyes went wide. A commendation from the governor himself. For exemplary service to the families of Montana Territory. Maggie laughed a slightly hysterical sound. Me, a woman who was eating rotten apples 3 years ago. You've done a lot since then. We've done a lot. All of us. It was true. The Sullivan McCann Family Fund, as they'd named it, had helped 37 families in 3 years. Widows, orphans, families displaced by fire or flood or simple bad luck. Maggie and Josiah took them in when they could found them work and housing, when they couldn't made sure no one in their corner of Montana had to starve the way Maggie once had. I need to tell Josiah. She found him in the south pasture mending fence alongside Samuel. At 13, her oldest son had grown tall and strong, more man than boy now. He worked beside Josiah with easy familiarity, the two of them moving in sync without needing to speak. Josiah? He looked up, saw her face, and immediately handed his tools to Samuel. What is it? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She thrust the letter at him. Read this. He read. His expression shifted from concern to confusion to something like awe. Maggie, this is... I know. The governor wants to meet you. I know. You're going to Helena to receive a commendation. I know. He grabbed her and spun her around right there in the pasture while Samuel watched with teenage embarrassment. Pa, people might see. Let them see. Josiah set Maggie down but kept his arms around her. Your mother is the most amazing woman in Montana Territory. The governor himself says so. The governor's probably just trying to get votes. Samuel McCann, don't you dare diminish this. Maggie's voice was firm, but her eyes sparkled. This is important, not for me, but for what it means, for all the families we can help. I know, Ma. I'm proud of you. Samuel ducked his head. I don't like it when you and Pa get all mushy in public. Get used to it. Josiah kissed Maggie's cheek. I plan to be mushy with your mother for the rest of my life. Gross. But Samuel was smiling as he turned back to the fence, and Maggie felt her heart swell with gratitude. This was what she'd wanted. Not the commendation, not the recognition, but this, a family that laughed together, worked together, loved each other without reservation. The news spread quickly. By dinner time, all 9 children knew. By the next morning, the whole town knew. And by the end of the week, Maggie found herself fielding visitors she hadn't expected. Mrs. Harrington was the first. Mrs. McCann. The banker's wife stood on the porch, her face a careful mask. I wonder if I might have a word. Maggie's first instinct was to refuse. 3 years hadn't dimmed the memory of Mrs. Harrington's cruelty, her sneering dismissal of a starving woman and her children. But she was trying to be better, trying to extend the same grace that had been extended to her. Come in. They sat in the parlor, 2 women who'd once been enemies, while Martha brought tea. I wanted to congratulate you, Mrs. Harrington said stiffly, on the governor's recognition. Thank you. And I wanted to... She stopped, started again. I wanted to apologize. Maggie nearly dropped her teacup. Pardon. For how I treated you when you first arrived. Mrs. Harrington's composure cracked slightly. I was cruel, unchristian. I watched you suffering, and I did nothing to help. I even tried to make it worse. Yes, you did. I've thought about it often, over the years, wondered what kind of person does something like that. She looked down at her hands. I think I was afraid. Afraid of what? Of you. Of what you represented. Mrs. Harrington met her eyes. I married Mr. Harrington when I was 16. I've never worked a day in my life, never had to survive on my own. And when I saw you, this woman who'd lost everything but was still fighting, still standing, I felt ashamed. Ashamed of how soft and useless I was. So you attacked me instead of helping. Yes. It was easier to tell myself you deserved your fate than to admit I could never have survived what you survived. Maggie was quiet for a long moment. Part of her wanted to throw this apology back in Mrs. Harrington's face, to remind her of every cruel word, every cold stare, every moment of suffering that could have been prevented. But what would that accomplish? Nothing but more bitterness, more pain. I forgive you. Mrs. Harrington's eyes widened. You do. I do. Not because what you did was acceptable, it wasn't. But because holding on to anger only hurts me. And I'm done being hurt. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. Maggie stood. That's what kindness is, Mrs. Harrington. Giving people what they don't deserve because we've been given what we didn't deserve. The banker's wife left shortly after, tears in her eyes, and Maggie felt something release in her chest. A knot she hadn't known she was carrying. That was generous of you. Josiah had been listening from the doorway. It was necessary. For both of us. You're a better person than me. I still want to punch her husband in the face. Josiah. What? He's the one who refused to give you credit 3 years ago. Said you were a bad risk. And now we have more money in his bank than half the town combined. Which is why I want to punch him. The satisfaction would be enormous. Maggie laughed despite herself. No punching the banker. Fine, but I reserve the right to glare at him disapprovingly. Glare all you want. He pulled her into his arms. Have I told you today that I love you? Not in the last hour. Oversight. I love you, Maggie McCann. I love you too. The kiss that followed was interrupted by Rosie's voice from the kitchen. Ma, Pa, the twins are fighting again. Josiah sighed. Duty calls. Always. But they were both smiling as they went to separate their 7-year-old sons, and Maggie thought not for the first time that this was what happiness felt like. The trip to Helena came faster than expected. Maggie took only Eliza with her, leaving the other children in Josiah and Martha's capable hands. The journey took 3 days by wagon, and mother and daughter spent most of it talking. Are you nervous? Eliza asked on the last night camped under a canopy of stars. Terrified. Why, you've faced down worse than politicians. Politicians don't try to kill you. They just bore you to death with speeches. Eliza laughed. At 13, she was becoming a young woman, her features settling into beauty, her sharp mind finding its edge. She'd been taking lessons from Sarah Patterson, learning to read and write better than most adults in the territory. Mama, can I ask you something? Anything, Lizzie. Do you ever think about Papa? The first one, I mean. Maggie considered the question. Sometimes. Less than I used to. Do you miss him? I miss who I thought he was, but that man was never real. The real William was someone I never truly knew. I don't remember him much anymore. Eliza's voice was small. Sometimes I try to picture his face and I can't. All I see is Pa Josiah. Is that bad? I don't know. It feels like I'm forgetting something important. Maggie reached over and took her daughter's hand. Your father gave you life, Lizzie. That's important. That matters. But Josiah gave you a home. He gave you safety and love and a future. You don't have to choose between being grateful to one and loving the other. I don't think I'm grateful to Papa. I think I'm angry at him. That's allowed too. Even after all this time. Feelings don't have expiration dates, baby. You feel what you feel for as long as you need to feel it. Eliza was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm glad he left. What? I'm glad Papa left. Because if he hadn't, we never would have ended up here. We never would have met Josiah. We never would have become a real family. Her voice strengthened. I know that's terrible. I know I shouldn't be glad that my father abandoned us. But everything we have now, everything good it happened, because of that terrible thing. Maggie felt tears prick her eyes. You're not terrible, Lizzie. You're human. And you're wise beyond your years. You always say that. Because it's always true. Helena was overwhelming. The territorial capital bustled with people, more people than Maggie had seen in one place since leaving Boston as a young bride. Buildings rose 3 and 4 stories high. Carriages rattled through streets paved with actual stones. It's so big, Eliza breathed. It's a city. They're all big. Have you been to many? I grew up in Boston. That's even bigger than this. I can't imagine. Neither could Maggie anymore. That life felt like it belonged to someone else. A younger woman, naive and hopeful, who believed that love would be enough to carry her through anything. She'd been wrong about love, but she'd learned better since. The governor's mansion was grander than anything Maggie had expected. She and Eliza were shown into a waiting room filled with other honorees, a man who'd built the first school in his county, a woman who'd nursed fever victims through an epidemic, a minister who'd established 12 churches across the territory. Mrs. McCann. A young aide approached. The governor will see you now. Maggie squeezed Eliza's hand. Stay here. I'll be right back. Ma, you look pale. I'm fine. You're shaking. That's just the cold. It's July. Eliza, I said I'm fine. Her daughter didn't look convinced, but she let Maggie go. The governor's office was smaller than she'd imagined, cluttered with papers and books and the accumulated chaos of governance. Governor Benjamin Potts rose from behind his desk, a genial man with a silver beard and kind eyes. Mrs. McCann, I've heard a great deal about you. I hope some of it was good, sir. All of it was good. He gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have much to discuss. They talked for nearly an hour. About the fund, about the families it had helped, about Maggie's vision for expanding it across the territory. Potts listened intently, asked sharp questions, and made notes in a leather-bound journal. You're not what I expected, he said finally. What did you expect, sir? Someone older, more polished, someone who'd been doing this work for decades. He smiled. Not a young mother who started with nothing and built something remarkable in just 3 years. I had help. My husband Martha, the Patterson family. I didn't do it alone. No one does anything alone, Mrs. McCann, but someone has to lead. Someone has to have the vision and the courage to pursue it. That someone is you. I just wanted to help people who were suffering the way I suffered. That's exactly what makes you special. You didn't forget where you came from. You didn't close the door behind you and pretend you'd never been hungry, never been desperate. Potts leaned forward. Most people who escape poverty spend their whole lives trying to forget it. You've spent yours trying to make sure others don't have to experience it. Maggie's throat tightened. My children almost died, Governor. They almost starved to death while a whole town watched and did nothing. I can't forget that. I won't forget that. And I refuse to let it happen to anyone else if I can help it. That's why I wanted to meet you. That's why I wanted to offer you this. He slid a document across the desk. Maggie read it, and her heart stopped. This is an official appointment. Territory Coordinator for Family Welfare Services. A government position with a salary and staff and real authority to implement your programs across Montana. Sir, I can't. You can. You're the only person who can. Potts met her eyes. I've been looking for someone to fill this role for 2 years. Someone who understands what it's like to be desperate. Someone who won't treat the poor as statistics or problems to be managed. Someone who sees them as people worth saving. I have 9 children. And you've built an organization that's helped 37 families while raising them. I think you can manage a government office. Maggie stared at the document. A government position, a salary, staff, authority. 3 years ago, she'd been eating rotten apples behind a stranger's barn. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need, but Mrs. McCann Maggie. He smiled. Say yes, Montana needs you. She walked out of the governor's office in a daze. Eliza jumped up. Mama, what happened? You were in there forever. He offered me a job. What? A government job. Territory coordinator for family welfare services. Eliza's eyes went wide. That sounds important. It is important. It's very important. What did you say? I said I needed to think about it. What's there to think about? Everything, Lizzie. Whether I'm qualified. Whether I can do it with 9 children at home. Whether your father will. Pa will support you. You know he will. I know. But this is a big decision. It affects all of us. Eliza grabbed her mother's hands. Mama, listen to me. You've spent your whole life putting everyone else first. Your children, your husband, strangers who needed help. Maybe it's time to do something for yourself. This isn't for myself. This is for... It's for everyone, I know. But it's also for you. It's proof that everything you went through meant something. That you're not just a survivor. You're a leader. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. When did you become so wise, Lizzie? I learned from the wisest woman I know. They held each other in the governor's waiting room, mother and daughter, while bureaucrats bustled past, and the business of government continued around them. Say yes, Mama. Eliza's voice was fierce. Say yes, and change the world. The ceremony was brief, but powerful. Governor Potts presented the commendations, spoke about the importance of community and compassion, and singled out Maggie's work as a shining example of what Montana can be. She accepted the recognition with grace, thanked everyone who had helped her, and managed not to cry until she was back in the carriage with Eliza heading home. You did it, Mama. Eliza squeezed her hand. You really did it. We did it. All of us. Are you going to take the job? Maggie looked out at the passing landscape, the mountains and prairies she'd come to love. Yes, I'm going to take it. Pa's going to be so proud. Pa's going to have to do more cooking. Eliza laughed. Martha will help. Martha's going to complain. Martha always complains. That's how you know she's happy. They arrived home 3 days later, dusty and exhausted, but elated. The children swarmed them before the wagon fully stopped, questions and embraces and excited chatter, all competing for attention. Maggie answered as best she could, hugging each of them in turn, marveling as always at how much they'd grown. Then she saw Josiah. He stood apart from the chaos, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You heard? She asked. Word travels fast. The whole territory's talking about the woman from Elk Ridge who impressed the governor. It's just a commendation. And a job offer. Maggie's heart stuttered. How did you know about that? Governor Potts sent a telegram, asked if I had any objections to my wife taking a position in his administration. What did you say? Josiah walked toward her slowly, and Maggie couldn't tell if he was happy or angry or something else entirely. I said I'd be the biggest fool in Montana to object. He stopped in front of her. I said any man lucky enough to marry you should spend every day helping you become who you're meant to be. Josiah. I said yes, Maggie. Of course I said yes. He pulled her close. This is your calling. This is what you were born to do. And I'm going to stand beside you every step of the way. It'll mean travel, time away from the family. We'll manage. It'll be hard. Everything worth doing is hard. I'm scared. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. He kissed her forehead. But Maggie, you've been preparing for this your whole life. Every hungry night, every cruel rejection, every moment of desperation, it all led here. To you being exactly the person Montana needs. I love you. I love you too. Now come inside. Martha's made your favorite dinner, and the children have been planning a celebration all week. The celebration was loud and chaotic and perfect. All 9 children had contributed something decorations. A cake that Mary had baked herself, songs that the twins had written, a poem that little Hannah recited with only minor stumbles. Samuel gave a toast that made everyone cry, and Rosie presented Maggie with a handmade card signed by every member of the family. To Ma, it read, "The bravest woman in Montana. We love you forever." Maggie kept that card for the rest of her life. Later, after the children were in bed and the house had grown quiet, she and Josiah sat on the porch watching the stars. "Do you remember the first night?" Maggie asked. "When you brought us here. Every moment of it. I was so scared, so angry. I kept waiting for you to show your true colors, to reveal what you really wanted from us. And now I know exactly what you wanted. The same thing I wanted: family. Someone to love and be loved by. That's simple. That's simple. And that complicated." Josiah took her hand. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "The apple tree." Maggie frowned. "What apple tree?" "I'm going to plant one. Out by the south fence where the light's good. I figure it'll take a few years to bear fruit, but eventually we'll have apples that aren't rotten." "Exactly." He squeezed her hand. "A reminder of where we started, of how far we've come." Maggie felt tears threatening again. She seemed to cry a lot these days. Happy tears. Grateful tears. Tears that came from having more love than she knew how to contain. "That's perfect," she whispered. "That's absolutely perfect." The years that followed weren't easy. Maggie took the government position and threw herself into the work. She traveled across Montana, meeting with families in crisis, establishing programs that provided food and shelter and hope to those who had none. She faced opposition politicians who thought her work was a waste of money, religious leaders who believed poverty was God's punishment for sin, businessmen who didn't want their taxes helping beggars. She fought them all. And she won. The children grew up. Samuel became a rancher like Josiah, eventually taking over the family operation. Eliza married Daniel Patterson and became a teacher, educating the next generation of Montana children. Mary opened a bakery in Elk Ridge that became famous across the territory. The twins joined the Army and served with distinction. Thomas became a doctor. Rosie followed in her mother's footsteps, running the family welfare services after Maggie retired. Little William became a lawyer and fought for the rights of the poor. And Hannah, the baby, who'd almost died those first terrible weeks, became the first female judge in Montana history. "You raised remarkable children," people would tell Maggie. "I just loved them," she'd reply. "That's all it takes." The apple tree grew. It took 5 years to bear fruit, and when it finally did, that first autumn morning when Maggie walked out to find the branches heavy with red and gold, she stood beneath it and wept. Josiah found her there. "First harvest," he said quietly. "What do you think?" Maggie picked an apple and bit into it. The juice ran down her chin, sweet and crisp and perfect. "I think," she said, "that this is the best apple I've ever tasted. Better than rotten ones from behind a barn. Much better." They stood together beneath the tree, two people who'd found each other in the darkness, who'd built something beautiful from the ruins of their separate griefs. No regrets. Josiah asked the same question he'd asked on their wedding night and every anniversary since. Not a single one. Not even the hard parts, the struggles, the setbacks, the times when it seemed like everything was falling apart. especially not those. Maggie leaned into him. The hard parts made the good parts possible. Without the pain, I wouldn't know how to appreciate the joy. That's very philosophical. I'm old. I'm allowed to be philosophical. You're not old. You're distinguished. I'm 63. Distinguished, like I said. They laughed together, the easy laughter of two people who'd shared a lifetime. Josiah died 3 years later, peaceful in his sleep with Maggie holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, this man who'd stopped for a stranger, who'd seen her when no one else would, who'd loved her and her children with everything he had. But even in grief, she found gratitude. 40 years together. 40 years of partnership and passion, and the daily choice to keep choosing each other. Not everyone got 40 years. She was lucky. The funeral drew hundreds of mourners, children and grandchildren, neighbors and friends, families, who'd been helped by the fund officials who'd worked with Maggie over the decades. They all came to honor a man who'd spent his life opening doors for people who had nowhere else to go. Samuel gave the eulogy. His voice broke twice, but he kept going. My father taught me that kindness isn't weakness, that helping others isn't charity, it's duty. That the measure of a man isn't what he accumulates, but what he gives away. He looked at Maggie, tears streaming down his face. He was the best man I ever knew, and I'm proud to carry his name. Afterward, Maggie stood alone at the gravesite. The children had offered to stay, but she'd sent them away. She needed this moment, this private goodbye. Thank you, she whispered to the fresh-turned earth. For stopping, for seeing me, for loving us all so completely. The wind rustled through the grass and Maggie could almost hear his voice. You saved yourselves. I just opened the door. She smiled through her tears. Always so humble. Right until the end. She lived another 12 years. They were good years full of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, of work that mattered, of a community that had grown to love her as much as she loved them. She watched her family flourish, saw the programs she'd built help thousands of families witness the territory become a state, and the frontier become a civilization. And every autumn, she picked apples from the tree Josiah had planted. The last one she picked was the sweetest. She was 87 years old, frail but clear-minded, sitting in a chair her grandchildren had placed beneath the apple tree. The fruit hung heavy on the branches, so different from those rotten apples behind a stranger's barn so long ago. Eliza herself, a grandmother, now sat beside her. Mama, you should rest. I've rested enough. Hand me that apple. Eliza obeyed. Maggie turned the fruit in her hands, marveling at its perfection. Do you know what I think about Lizzie more than anything else? What, Mama? That moment, when Josiah found us behind the barn, when he saw us there, starving and desperate, and at the very end of our hope, and instead of walking past, he stopped. He was a good man. He was, but it's more than that. Maggie's eyes were bright. Anyone can be good when it's easy. Josiah was good when it was hard, when helping us meant risk and sacrifice and taking on problems he didn't need. He chose kindness anyway. He chose us. And you chose him. I chose hope. That's what he really offered Lizzie. Not food or shelter or safety hope. The belief that things could get better, that we weren't alone, that somewhere in this harsh world there was still softness. Eliza took her mother's hand. You've spent your whole life proving him right, showing everyone that softness can survive, that kindness can win. Sometimes, Maggie smiled, not always, but sometimes is enough. Sometimes has to be enough. She bit into the apple, sweet and crisp and perfect, just like that first harvest. Mama? Eliza's voice was careful. Are you all right? I'm perfect, Lizzie. Absolutely perfect. She closed her eyes and let the sun warm her face and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Boston to Nebraska, Nebraska to Montana, hunger to plenty, despair to hope, a stranger's barn to a home full of love. Every step had been worth it. Every struggle, every scar, every moment of darkness, it had all been worth it. "I'm ready," she whispered. "Ready for what, Mama?" "To go home." Eliza's breath caught. "Mama." "Don't cry, Lizzie. I've lived a beautiful life. I've loved and been loved. I've made a difference. I've watched my children grow into extraordinary people." Maggie opened her eyes and smiled at her daughter. What more could anyone ask? More time. I could ask for more time. Time's not what matters. Love is what matters, and I've had so much love. She took one more bite of the apple, savoring the sweetness. "Tell the others I'm proud of them. Every single one. Tell them to be kind, it's the most important thing. Tell them to open doors for strangers, just like Josiah opened his door for us. Tell them what, Mama?" Maggie's eyes drifted to the horizon, to the mountains she'd come to love, to the land that had become her home. Tell them that the hard parts make the good parts possible, and that kindness always wins in the end. She closed her eyes one final time. And Margaret Sullivan McCann, who had been starving, who had been desperate, who had eaten rotten apples and begged for scraps and nearly died in the mud, went home to the man who had saved her. The apple tree still stands on that Montana ranch. Every autumn it bears fruit sweet and crisp and perfect. And every autumn the family gathers to pick it. They tell stories about Maggie and Josiah, about 9 children who walked across a territory about kindness that changed everything. And they remember the lesson that 2 broken people taught them, that sometimes the darkest moments lead to the brightest futures. That hope is never wasted. That love can grow anywhere, even in the hardest soil. And that all it takes to change someone's life is the courage to stop to see them, and to say the words that Josiah McCann once said to a starving woman and her 9 children, "Come in, you're safe now.